I can, retell a story using, we know all of these things. A character, which is the person or the animal in the story. So let me grab our character for us. Our character is the person or animal in the story. We can retell using the setting, which is the time and place. Yeah, say setting. Setting, very good. We're also going to retell the story finding which one's this? Problem. Yeah, pretend like you're pulling a knot. Oh, say problem. It's the thing that's not going to go right in the story. And when my problem becomes a bow, it's called the what? Solution. Yeah. The solution is how it ends. How is the problem solved? Give your brains a kiss. But today, we're going to get to ask ourselves, how does the government make decisions for our community? And I chose that question to ask because I bet you've been hearing a lot about the government. Maybe you've heard about the president or mayors or governors or even people who are just role models in the community. They've been making lots of decisions to keep us safe. So we're going to read about how they make those decisions, and in that way we can better understand what they're doing to help us with the coronavirus. When I say got it, you say check. Got it? Got it? Check. Very good. So good readers are always sitting up so straight and tall. Put your hands in your lap, in your lap. The title of our story is Grace Goes to Washington. So I'm going to put my hands on the front cover, let it send messages up my arm. Let's look at what we see. Oh, I think I already see the characters. That might be Grace. I'm inferring that because of her name in the title. Let's see, maybe these are just her friends or other kids. I see an older person, maybe that's the teacher. And then the setting, I think they're going to go to the Capitol, which is Washington, D.C. Let's read to find out. Okay, team, so remember, this is part of our job today. Yeah, this is our story math. And at the beginning of this story, we're going to get to learn about character and setting. In the middle of this story, we're going to get to learn about the problem. And then at the very end of this story, we'll find out the solution. You guys already did a great job because I think we learned about the character and the setting just from the front cover. On Friday afternoon in April, Mrs. Barrington shared a large diagram of the 3 branches of the U.S. government. Oh yeah, that's the social studies question we're answering today. How does the government make decisions for our community? But Grace Campbell could not stop daydreaming about the upcoming field trip to Washington, D.C. Grace, do you know who's in charge here? Mrs. Barrington asked. Who's in charge here? Grace repeated. Principal Perez? A few of her classmates giggled. Now let's look at what they put on the board. Okay, we can read this picture. This is called checks and balances. I wonder what that means. And then there's 3 branches of government. How many branches of the government? 3, very good. There's judicial, legislative, and executive. Now don't worry, we're going to learn about all 3 of those. Judicial, legislative, and executive, and they work together to make sure that they're following the Constitution. Oh, I remember hearing about that when we learned about American symbols. Can you say Constitution? Yeah, let's do a syllable chin drop for Constitution. Ready? Constitution. Constitution. 4 syllables. Constitution, it's almost like how we have rules in our classroom and Miss Shea points at them and we follow them. That's the Constitution. America has rules that they look at and follow as well. Well, Mrs. Barrington, I suppose you could say Principal Perez is like Well, said Mrs. Barrington, I suppose you could say Principal Perez is like the executive branch here at Wilson Elementary, because she's the head of our school. But right now we're talking about the U.S. government. Sorry, Grace answered. The president. or she leads the executive branch. That's correct, Mrs. Barrington smiled. The president. So the president is the executive branch. It's the one person that leads that branch. The last bell of the day rang. We'll discuss this more next week, she announced. Student council members, Grace and Sam, don't forget you have a meeting after school. At the meeting, classroom representatives were discussing their ideas on how to spend the money raised from their holiday bake sale. So student council is a group of kids that get voted on by their class, and then they work together to make decisions for the school. And so if we look at the beginning of our story, let's think about who the characters are. Yes, the characters are Grace, Mrs. Barrington. Okay, yeah, we've learned about the president. He's not in the book yet, but he will be, right? Who else? Yeah, so we don't know Grace's classmates' names, but they're still characters. So we're going to include them in our character list. And then what is the setting right now? Where does the story take place? The story takes place in a school. Yeah, it's daytime. And if I had to think about the season, Grace isn't wearing a coat or a winter scarf or anything. So it must be at the beginning or the end of the school year. So now that we know the characters and setting, I wonder if we're going to find out about the problem in the middle of the story. Oh, look, these two student council members, it says a healthy mind is a healthy body. That must be what they want to spend their money on for the holiday bake sale. Thomas and his committee petitioned for new sports equipment. A healthy mind is a healthy body. Grace and her committee thought new books for the library was the way to go. Principal Perez even offered her own suggestion. The music room sure could use some new instruments. Mr. Marshall, the media center teacher, listened carefully to all of the arguments and took notes. So I think this page just told us the problem. They don't know how to spend their bake sale money. Yeah, some want PE equipment, some want books, some want music. They're all good ideas, Grace later admitted to Sam. There's no way we'll agree before the vote next week. You know what I was thinking during the meeting? Sam asked. No, what? If Principal Perez is like the executive branch, can you say executive? Executive, yeah, the executive branch is where the president is. That's Principal Perez. I think the student council is kind of like the legislative branch because we're the elected leaders from each class and we help make decisions for the school. So if Principal Perez is the executive branch, say executive. Yep, what's the initial sound? Very good. The student council, everyone who's representing the classrooms, is the legislative branch. Let's say that word, legislative. Ooh, what's the initial sound in that one? Oh, they're the legislative branch because, let's reread. We're the elected leaders from each class and we help make decisions for the school. So every state has elected leaders. Missouri has a governor and a mayor and people that we voted on. And they represent Missouri. And those people are part of the legislative branch. They work with the executive branch to help make us decisions. Grace considered Sam's comparison. Yeah, who knew so many people had a say in how to spend cookie money, she grumbled. The following day, Grace could hardly contain her excitement. It was finally field trip day. As the bus drove down Pennsylvania Avenue, cherry blossoms dotted the streets like pink pom-poms. Grace and her classmates visited the Lincoln Memorial, the U.S. Capitol, where the legislative branch meets. Oh, that's where the state representatives meet. And the Supreme Court building. That's where you'll find the Judicial Branch and Supreme Court judges, Sam pointed out. They decide if our rules and laws are fair. Kind of like Mr. Marshall does at our student council meetings, Grace added. During a tour of the White House, home of the executive branch, Grace's dream of becoming president felt more real. How proud she looks. That's a good dream to have, very ambitious. Their final stop of the day was the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial. All of these special memorials are in Washington, D.C. because that's the capital of the country. Grace studied the words engraved on the monument and thought about their meaning. Make a career of humanity. Commit yourself to the noble struggle for equal rights. You will make a greater person of yourself, a greater nation of your country, and a finer world to live in. Those are words Martin Luther King said. We learned about him. At recess the next day, the argument about what to purchase for the school grew more heated. Look at this crummy basketball, Clara complained. It's practically worthless. At least you have a ball, Fletcher groaned. There are 2 new books in the Ninja Wizard series, but our library doesn't have either one. Hannah lobbied the loudest for new instruments. Well, I for one am sick and tired of playing the recorder in music class. Principal Perez is right. I think that the kids at recess could be compared to the citizens in America, right? And they sometimes disagree on what's the best thing to do. So they have to bring these issues to the legislative branch who represent them, right? How Grace and Sam represent them, and they're going to have to bring those issues to student council. In the midst of the argument, Grace glanced at Thomas, who was unusually quiet. She looked past him to see who he was staring at. Grace didn't recognize the boy sitting all alone. He must be new, she thought. He looked kind of sad. Just then the bell rang and students scattered. Wait, Grace called out to the boy. You forgot something. Grace handed him his sketchbook. I like your drawings, she said. Thanks, said the boy with a smile. Grace caught up to Thomas in the hallway. I have an idea, she said. A few days later, the student council's last meeting of the year was being called to order. And look what it says. It says, vote today. Excuse me, Grace interrupted. Before we vote, because remember, just like in our executive and legislative and judicial branch at their student council, they'll vote to make sure what they're doing is fair. Oh yeah, the judicial branch. Say judicial. Judicial, yeah, it has the Supreme Court in it. And the judicial branch makes sure that what the executive and legislative is doing is fair and helps the people of our country. Excuse me, Grace interrupted. Before we vote, Thomas and I would like to introduce you to someone. This is Aman. He's new to our school. We'd like all of you to consider one more option for how to spend the bake sale money. Together, they rolled out a big poster. We're calling it the Friendship Mall, Thomas said proudly. Aman helped us design it. So look, it's the Friendship Mall. And what they did is benches to sit, talk, and play, flowers to make you happy, mosaic, we can make this ourselves, that's the decoration. Let's see why they're making the Friendship Mall. It's a place where you can go at recess to let other students know when you need a friend. Ooh, that sounds like something that would mostly help everyone. Next, Thomas spoke about their field trip to Washington, D.C., and Grace read a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. A finer, kinder world starts with us and the choices we make. She concluded, thank you for listening. Everyone clapped. Principal Perez wiped away a few tears. Mr. Marshall pounded his gavel. It's time to vote! After the ballots were collected, see, that's how we vote, through the ballots. After the ballots were collected from each classroom representative and the votes were tallied, Student Council President Grace Campbell peeked at the results and grinned. It's unanimous decision, she announced excitedly. All members are in favor of. What do you guys think they voted for? I think they voted for the Friendship Mall too, because it mostly helps everyone in the school, doesn't it? The Friendship Mall! You guys were right. Give your brains a kiss. So smart. The room filled with happy cheers. Principal Perez took a seat and then, much just like the president signs a bill into law, she approved the election results, making the decision final. Today you put your own wants and needs aside in order to serve others, she said, beaming. That is true leadership. And this time, everyone agreed. Look, the signs say, be the change, united we stand. Remember when we made signs too? Yeah. So that's the end of the story. Now, we went through the character and setting, and we discussed the problem, right? The problem was at the student council meeting. They couldn't decide what to spend their bake sale money on. And I think that's a problem that we probably have in real life in America, right? Because lots of people want different things. So we have to leave it up to the government to help each other make laws and rules that will help solve problems, and they have to be fair. So at the end of the story, we learned about the solution. What was the solution? Let's go back and look. How did they solve the problem? Yeah, Grace and Amon and some other people on student council created a friendship mall that would make sure that that's something that everyone can use and benefit from, and it's what their community needed. Give yourselves a hula hula. Hula hula, hula hula. Now, to help us answer our social studies question, we were going to answer, how does the government make decisions to help our community? Well, because the author gave us even more information about the government, and I'm going to read it to you. The executive branch. The President of the United States leads this branch. The President has the power to recommend new laws, reject laws, and sign bills into laws, just like Principal Perez. He or she is also in charge of our armed forces, which is why sometimes we refer to the President as the Commander-in-Chief. Wow, I didn't know that. And the legislative branch. I didn't realize how many people work together to make rules for our community. This branch of government is comprised of Congress. Congress is made up of two groups, the House of Representatives and the Senate. These elected officials, so we in Missouri, if you voted, you helped choose these people. Our state representatives and our senators, their job is to pass bills and make laws for our country. So they work with the president to pass bills. And then the last one is the judicial branch. This third branch is made up of the highest court in the country, the Supreme Court. There are 9 Supreme Court judges called justices. Can you say justices? Justices, yes, Supreme Court justices. They're judges. They do not make laws. They make decisions about laws to determine if they are fair based on the Constitution. So they check, kind of like how we check our rules on the wall, they check the Constitution to make sure these laws are fair. Whereas the executive branch and the legislative branch are elected by the people, by us, the judicial branch is chosen by the president and approved by the Senate. Wow! So you might be wondering, why do we need 3 groups of people making laws for our community? Well, let me tell you. The Constitution, the list of rules, created a system called checks and balances. Say that with me. Wow, checks and balances. You're putting a lot of stuff in your brain today. And checks and balances prevent one branch from having too much power. So just like how the beginning of the year, we made our rule list together to make sure that everyone had a say. And then these three branches work together to make sure that not just one branch gets power, but it checks everyone and makes sure that the power is distributed. So this is a very important feature in the way our democratic government operates because it keeps the system fair and just, and it protects the rights of the people. So that means when we were making new laws or rules about the coronavirus, all three of these groups may have had a say in things that we were doing to make sure that it was protecting us. Yeah, so that's another reason why it's so important to vote. And then once we do that, we have to listen to our government officials because they're working hard to make rules that protect us. So we're going to continue talking about how the government and what things are happening with the government during the coronavirus tomorrow. Bye.